Alright, so I want to go over how we can connect the MySQL database management system to our Java applications. Right, so for this particular demonstration, I'll be using the Eclipse IDE as well as the MySQL shell. For persons who would want to know how to do this using NetBeans, I will do a separate video on that, just to do the walkthrough of how you can achieve the same thing using NetBeans. But for now, I'm going to be using Eclipse. Right, so I did a previous video as well where I showed you how to download and install MySQL. All right, now we have MySQL installed. I just want to set up a few things in MySQL. So I'm going to connect to the MySQL server. I am going to create a database, create a table, and then connect the database that we created to our Java application, and also use our Java application to insert some data into our newly created database. All right, so first off, when the shell is open, it will appear like this. So it is saying now MySQL JS. I need to switch this to SQL because we want to write SQL commands. So I'm going to say slash SQL. Alright, so it's now in SQL mode, and I want to establish a connection to my database. So I'm going to say slash connect space root, which is the name, which is my username on my local server. So MySQL is running on my local server. So I'm going to say root at local host, enter, and now I'm being asked to enter my password. Now I would have set a password when I was installing MySQL server. Right, so when I was installing the MySQL server, I had to set a password for it. During that installation as well, I installed other things that were important, but for now, I just need to type in the password for my MySQL server. All right, so hopefully my password is correct. We will see. I'm going to press enter. Alright, so now it's asking me if I want to remember my password or if I want to save my password. I select no, because there are times when I use other applications like XAMPP and so forth, and I wouldn't want it to create any conflict. So for now, I'm just going to say no. And for that, it's N and enter. Alright, so we are connected here to my MySQL server on localhost. So I can now go ahead and create my database. So again, this is standard SQL command that most persons are probably familiar with. If you're working with SQL, then you should know the basic SQL commands. So I'm going to say create database. Always double check your spelling. Alright, so create database. I'm going to give the database a name. I'm going to call it my Java DB and semicolon. All right, enter, and our database was created successfully. One row affected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if my database is on the list of those databases stored on our MySQL management system. Right? So I'm going to do show databases, and So here we have our database, my Java DB. So we are good to go. Right, so next I'm just going to quickly create a table within that database that we just created. Now I have to specify that I want to use a particular database, and the database that I want to use is the my Java DB that we just created, right? So I'll just type use my Java DB, which is the name of the database that we created here, right? Right, definitely ending this with my semicolon and enter. Alright, so it told us that we are now using the my Java DB as our current database. It says that it is running as our default database, or we would have the default schema is now set to Java, my Java DB. So any command I type from here on will affect this particular database. Now I'm going to quickly create a table. So I'm going to say create table, and I'm going to create a table to store users, password, and username. So I'm going to say create table, users, and I need an ID. I'm going to make it int. I'm going to specify that it cannot be null, so I'm going to say not null. I'm going to make it my primary key anyway, so it will be not null automatically, but I'm just going to say not null, and I want it to auto increment, so I'm going to say auto underscore increment. Right, just checking to ensure that the spelling is correct. I would want to type this over. Right, next I want to create a column to store username. So I'm going to say u name. I'm going to make this a varchar, and I'm going to say 50 characters. Also going to mark this as not null. Right, next I want to create a column to store the password, and again I'm going to make it varchar 50 characters should be fine. Again, this is going to be not null. And then finally, I'm going to state that my primary key is our ID. Right, and we can now go ahead and execute this particular command. Alright, so it says query okay, so our table was created. Alright, so for now I am finished with the MySQL shell. I'm going to now go over to Eclipse, where we will write some Java code to interact with the database and also store some data in the database. Right? So over to Eclipse. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So I'm going to create a Java project. I'm going to give this project a name. Let me call it my Java DB connect. All right, that's the name of my project. All right, I'm going to click on finish. All right, so first off, I want to establish a connection with the project. So the first thing I need to do is to bring over the connector J, which will allow us to connect the connector J jar file, which will allow us to connect our MySQL database to our Java project. Now, when I was downloading MySQL, I would have downloaded the MySQL server as well as the connector J driver, which is specifically built to allow us to connect our MySQL databases to our Java application. So I will now need to sort of include that driver within this project that I just created. So pay close attention to this particular section or steps that I'll be doing, right? So I'm going to firstly just right click on the project that I just created, all right? And then I'm going to go to build path. I'm going to click on configure build path. Now I'm going to click on, well, I should be on the libraries tab. If you are not on the libraries tab, then click on the libraries tab. And then we are going to see a class path here. We're going to click on that. And then we're going to click on add external jars. All right, so this part is very important. All right, so once I click on that, now I would have added MySQL connector J already to previous applications. But if it's your first time and you're wondering where you can find this particular file, this particular jar file, then it should be in the location where you install MySQL. So for me, it's on my C drive inside my program files, and it's my x86 program files here. Once I open that up, I should be seeing a folder for my SQL. I open that up. I should be seeing a folder here for connector J. I'll open that up, select the connector J jar file, click on open, and it will now add this connector or this driver to our project. Right? I'm going to apply and then apply and close. Now this will allow us to establish the connection to our MySQL database. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to write some code to actually do the connection and also interact with the database. So I'm going to add a class file to my project. It's a simple class file. I'm going to call this MySQL connect. All right, this will be the package, which is the same name that we created when we were creating the project. I'm going to be using the public static void main because it's just a simple Java class file that we are creating. Then I'm going to click on finish. All right, now when we are working with SQL or working with databases in Java, we need to ensure that we import a particular library, and that library is the java.sql library. Now, I'm not sure about the different classes that I'll be using from this particular package or library. So what I'm going to do is do a asterisk, which will give me access to all the classes in this particular library. Right, so this is very important. Right, so this is allowing us to use our JDBC API, our Java Database Connectivity API, right, found, which is wrapped up inside here. All right, so we can go ahead and write the code to make the connection. So first, I'm going to use the connection interface, which is provided to us within this particular library. I'm going to say connection con is equal to null. So we're going to set it to null to start with. All right, now when we are working with databases or writing anything SQL related, we will be prompted to put it inside of a try catch. Right, so we'll be prompted. If we don't, we'll be given a warning of sorts to say that this must be inside of a try catch. Now it makes sense to use exception handling because we are trying to establish a connection to a database. If it's a case where something went wrong along the line when we are trying to make the connection, then we'd want to see an error message, or we'd want to see the exception being handled, right? Whatever the issue is, we'd want to see it being handled. So I'm going to use my try catch. Try, right? So I'll get an error here until I actually do the catch. So what I'm going to do is from now, I'm just going to say catch. Well, again, double check your spelling. All right. And the specific errors that we're, or the specific exceptions that we're looking to catch is any SQL exceptions. Right, and I'm going to create a reference to this SQL exception class. I'm just going to say EX. And then whatever we catch will go inside here. All right. Now let me go ahead and establish something else. Now, when we are connecting to our database, we will need to specify a few things in Java. We'll need the URL to where the database is located, which will include stating which database management system we are using, stating the IP. For us, we are using localhost, so that will make up our IP. Also stating the port number for the particular database management system that we are using. By default, MySQL uses port 3306, and we also need to state the name of the database that we want to connect to, right? So I'm going to create a string here, and I'm going to call it DBURL, right? So that's the URL. This will store the URL to where we can find our database. It's a string, so we must put it inside quotation. So I'm going to say JDBC. Right, so we must specify that we are using JDBC. Then I'm going to say that we are using, or we're trying to connect to a MySQL database. And then I need to state the IP. Again, for us, or for me in this situation, it will be local host, right? And then the port number needs to be specified. For MySQL, it is 3306, and then the database that we're trying to connect to is the database that we created here, the MyJavaDB, right? So I need to specify that. It's MyJavaDB. Right, so the URL was set. Now, I also need to state the username for the database server, for the MySQL server, and I also want to state the password for the MySQL server. So just to remind you of something, when I was connecting to the MySQL server, I connected using root at localhost. So root is my username, and I need to type the password that was entered here. Right? And again, the password would have been established, or you would have created the password when you were installing the MySQL database management system. So I'm going to store the username in a string as well. I'm going to call this db username or dbu name. As I said, the username is root. Alright, next I'm going to create a string to store the password. Alright, so I'll be exposing my password here, but it's okay for the fact that this database is on localhost, and I don't think you can remotely access my database at this moment. So in that case, I am fine. So I'm using it's a string, so it must be inside quotation, right? Right, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so if there is any issue with this URL or with the username or the password, we have it inside of our try, and the catch will catch whatever exception is thrown if there is any issue. All right, so I'm going to use my connection here to now try and fully establish the connection, or try to establish the connection. Right, so I'm going to use the con reference. So I'm going to say con is equal to driver manager dot get connection. So I want to get the connection, and what I need to pass to the parameter of this get connection method is the database URL as well as the database username as well as the database password, right? So those three things are needed to help us in establishing the connection to our database. Next, what I'll do is I'm going to use an if statement to help us with the database connection, right? Or at least display a message if we are successfully connected to the database. So I'm going to say if con not equal to null. So if something is actually being stored inside here, which means that this connection, get connection method would have picked up on these and then store the information inside the con. So if it is not null, we would have successfully established a connection. So for this, I'm going to say system. Alright, so I'm going to do a system.out.println to display a message in the console. I'm going to say connected to the database. Right, so that's our message if we successfully connected. Now, if for some reason we did not successfully connect to the database, I'm going to display a message inside of our catch block right here. Right, so I'm going to do another system.out.println. All right, so I'm just going to say an error occurred while trying to connect. Right? And what I'll do as well, I'll also print what the specific error might be. So let me just copy this. And I could have printed it in the same line, but let me just say right, so I'm going to use this EX reference, which is a reference to the SQL exception class. I'm going to say EX dot, and the method I want to use here is the get message method. Right? So if there's an error, the get message method will tell us what the particular error is, or give us some idea, some suggestion. Right. All right. So I'm going to first test the connection, and then I'm going to do an insert just to see if the data was able to be inserted from our Java code into the database. So let's go ahead and test the connection. So I'm going to click my run button here. All right, and we are connected to the database. So that's a good thing. All right, so we are connected to the database. So next, I'll just write some code to insert data into the database from our Java code. All right, so I'm going to put the code to insert the data. I'm going to put that code within my try block here. So I'm going to place it after where the code to establish the connection is. I'm going to say, I'm going to create a SQL command now. So I'm going to make this a string. And I'm going to call it SQL insert, and then I'm going to say equal. I'm going to write my SQL insert statement here. So that will be insert into, and if you recall our table that we created, it was called users, right? So I'm going to say insert into users, right? And I'm going to specify the columns. Now, let's say you are working and you don't remember what the column names are. There's a way you can check, right? All right, so just to check the column names, we can type some SQL command here, and I'm going to use the show column command. So I'm going to say, and I know that the columns are uname and pass w, but just in case you would have closed out of your MySQL shell and you don't remember what the column names are, you can just bring up back the MySQL shell and type in the show columns from And the database is called my Java DB, right? And we need to append the table name to this, so it's dot users. And this now should provide us with the name of our columns. So it show columns from the database name dot the table name. And as you can see, the columns are listed here, uname, pass, W. So this is important if you are writing your Java code and you don't remember what your column names are. All right, so we have our column name, our uname, and pass W. Now I need to now set the values. So I'm going to say values, and for this I'll be using prepared statements. All right, again, prepared statements, well, prepared statements are very important in terms of trying to prevent SQL injection attacks and also to help with the efficiency in performance, because your prepared statements, they will be pre-compiled, which means that they don't have to be compiled each time you want to use the statements. So I'm going to say the values will be 1 question mark, 2 question marks, right? And what this is saying to us is that, sorry about that. So what this is saying to us is that this is a placeholder. The first question mark is a placeholder for the username. The second question mark is a placeholder for the password, right? Now, next, I'll be using the prepared statement interface. So I'm going to say prepared statement. I'm going to create a reference for this, and the reference that I'm going to create, I'm going to call it PSTMT, right? I'm going to set this equal to my connection reference dot prepare statement, and the statement that we are preparing is this SQL insert statement here, right? This SQL insert statement, right? That's the one that we are preparing. Now I need a way to associate the values that will be inserted, the actual values that will be inserted with these placeholders. So for that, I'm going to say PSTMT dot, and I'm going to use the set string method for this. I'm going to say set string. All right, so it asks us to use an integer and then some string. All right, so what I'm going to use here is the number 1, which represents the username, and then the string I'm going to use is the actual username that I want to insert in the database. I'm just going to say jwill. So this will set the actual username here to this. So it will replace the first question mark with the actual username. I'm going to do the same thing for the password. Right, so I'm going to do, now the password is associated with the second question mark placeholder here. So I'm going to change this to number 2, and my password will be A B C D 1 2 3. Right, that'll be my password, and pretty much that is it in terms of associating the placeholders here with an actual value. Now next, I want to actually execute this insert command. So for this, I'm going to say int, I'm going to create a variable called row inserted, and I'm going to set this equal to the pstmt. I'm going to call upon the execute update function here, which belongs to prepared statement. All right, so that will execute our insert command for us. And then I'm just going to put a little user message here saying that the data was inserted successfully. I'm just going to borrow this um, system.out here. So I'm going to say I'm going to use this row inserted variable. So I'm going to say row inserted. I'm going to concatenate a message here. I'm going to say row or rows inserted successfully. All right. Now let's execute this. Hopefully there are no errors. Just before I execute this though, let me go ahead and close the prepared statement and also close the connection. So let me do pstmt dot close. I want to close my prepared statement and close the connection as well. So it's con dot clse. All right. So let's click our run button again and see if the data will be inserted successfully. All right, and it is telling us that one row or rows inserted successfully. I'm just going to quickly go back to my shell here and write a little select command just to see if I can see the data. So I'm going to say select all from users. All right, and it did show us that the data is in our is in our database table. All right, so basically that is it. I would have walked you through how to include the connector J driver in your project. We looked at creating the tables, creating the database, inserting data into the database table from the Java code. All right, so that is basically it for this little demo. Again, I'm going to do another video just showing the a similar process, but this time using NetBeans. All right, I'm just going to show how to include the connector J in NetBeans, and so I won't necessarily be writing any more code for that particular thing, because the process in terms of the coding aspect of it is the same. It's just a few little steps that are different in terms of connecting the connector J in NetBeans. All right, so that is it for this demo.